Hey folks, Jimmy here, aka Palette of the Dead. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the latest issue of Warhammer 40k Combat Patrol magazine. Now, as per usual with all these videos, if you like them, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and of course, drop me a comment down below. I love hearing back from you guys, and it does really go a massive way to helping out the channel too. Now, this week, issue number 23 of good old Combat Patrol magazine. And obviously we're into the Aeldari, so it's part 1 of 2 of our Aeldari Guardian Defenders. These are our more generic troops for the Aeldari range. You do get 2 sprues here, so we have a fair bit to get started with. Now, I will say, if you are new to the hobby, this might look a little bit daunting, because this is obviously far more parts than what you got with any of the Space Marines, and even with the Tyranids minis. So I will fully advise, take your time, look through the guide, the build guide for these, and just take it steady. You do not need to rush it. There is no hurry. You can build these up absolutely fine. Literally clip them off. If you have little spurs or anything like that of plastic, if you can, get yourself some sanding loops. In all honesty, you can buy things like these ones, which are flexible like on a sponge. You can buy sets of multi-grit ones if you look for sponge sandpaper and stuff like that. And yeah, on say like Amazon, in all honesty, I think I bought these. So you've got a 400, a 600 and a 1000 to 1200 grit. So different grits of sponge sandpaper. And I think that was about £6. So dead cheap at times. If you're shopping in the right places, Amazon's probably really good for them. And you can get all them little bits of plastic and them little spurs of plastic and mold lines off everything without damaging the model. If you're going over it with a more flat surface like a craft knife, or even the good old mold line remover tool that you can get from GW, in all honesty, I find it leaves flat spots, whereas them sanding loops are literally, they're made because they're flexible. You can go over round surfaces and keep it fairly round without knackering it up. So, you know, I advise go for some of them. They're very handy for this and things like gunpla and stuff like that. So, happy days. But anyway, really good kits. Obviously, a lot of parts. There are interchangeable parts as well, so you do not have to stick with what the guide says. So if you have a choice with certain things, whether you want helmets, whether you don't want helmets, whether you want more of the pistols, you can do. If you want all of them with rifles, it's entirely up to you. There are also going to be some parts where you can add them if you want to, which are you kind of like your little pieces, which are accent pieces, which I think are on the sprue for next week, which are entirely up to you, whether you want them or not. Your choice. But have a good think about it. And any of the little bits, so like especially things like the helmets, if you do not use the helmets, you can use these as scatter terrain later on, which the dead easy way of that is you literally cut off the rounded bit, and you can have them sticking out of any mud, you can have them on the side, you can literally cut through part of them so they're a little bit kind of like sticking out ground, and you can use them on the basis of other minis later on. So do not chuck them away. You can utilise them in a lot of ways. You can even with some of the weaponry as well sometimes. A little bit more tricky, but you can do it. So yeah, it's worth doing. Just so it makes your bases look a little bit better than just for, you know, having a bit of a void there and nothing on it. Anywho, enough talk about that type of stuff. Going into the issue, obviously we are greeted by our how to build guide. As I say, follow it step by step, dry fit it, make sure you're smoothing everything off, take your time. If you need help with anything like building, by all means go into your local Warhammer store. They guys there will help you out. If you have friends who have been in the hobby a bit longer and are a bit more experienced, get them to help you out. If you really don't have any of them options available to you, then in all honesty, YouTube is your pal. by all means, you'll find loads of build guides, how to build, and tips and tricks and everything like that from loads of YouTube creators that will help you out. Anyway, talking of the interchangeable parts, as I say, you'd have different heads. So there are different heads available. So there are 10 different helmets. There are the kind of helmetless heads and stuff like that if you want them to not have a helmet. There is a couple of other options with certain helmets as well. So your choice, dealer's choice on that one. You can play about with it. You do have some alternate versions and certain ways of doing certain weapons as well. So you can have a little bit of a play with them. And then it's just slapping it together. So straightforward. Once you've got all them bits done, it is just literally putting all your weapons on, building all up, done. Happy days. When you're done, and when we've got all of the parts, we'll have 10 of our Guardian Defenders. If you're following the magazine, you will have a couple without the helmets. If you're going for the same as a magazine, I say you don't have to. Personally, I'm going to go with pretty much all of them with helmets because I think they look better. And I can't be bothered with painting faces all the time. So, yeah, up to you. But really, really good stuff. When we also get the sprue next week, we'll also get the heavy weapon platform, which is dead easy to build, as you can see. Literally, there is, 7 parts there. You can't really go wrong. So, dead easy. Happy days. That also does, if I remember rightly, that might also have a build option as well. So, yeah. Anywho, moving on from there, we move straight into a read section, all to do with the Aeldari, obviously because we are in the Aeldari section of this magazine's run. Weapons of the Insuriani. Aeldari weapons are warriors are highly trained, and many of them spend years of their lives perfecting highly focused specialisms. For each such warriors, only the best weapons will suffice, and the armories of craft worlds are laden with innumerable exquisitely made weapons, each one carefully designed to exacting specifications. To the Aeldari, both the crafting and the use of weaponry is considered a high art. Their technology has an ancient lineage and is far in advance of that possessed by many other species. In comparison, even the best weapons produced by humanity's Mechanicus look childish experiments. So, the Aeldari use some very, very highly advanced weaponry, as you can tell by the look of them. So, the Aeldari have these nice, kind of clean looking, sleek weaponry, whereas the Space Marines use very blocky, chunky weapons, which obviously are designed to pack more of a punch, but it looks a little bit less refined. And not a lot of craft is going into it. It's just literally churned out. There's no pride taken in the work. It's just done. Whereas the Aeldari weapons are designed to look like a master has made them. Like essentially the comparison between a longsword and a katana, for instance. A katana made by a master swordsmith takes years to make. Whereas a generic longsword or gladius or anything like that made for the Roman Empire were made kind of just done and then chucked out, and they'll be made within a couple of days. So there's a big difference of how different weaponry works for different races. You get a little bit more information about the Aeldari armory there. So you got shuriken, catapults and pistols. So the shuriken weapons are the characteristic small arms of the Insuriani forces. They use magnetic repulsion to hurl out microscopically thin discs that rip through bone, flesh, and armour with ease. Which is why they're called shurikens, so kind of like your little shurikens that you'd see in like Ninja Turtles or something like that. D-cannons are horrifying and powerful weapons that rip a hole in real space, opening up a brief miniature portal to the warp, which sounds terrifying. Star cannons are highly advanced plasma weapons, leveraging the Insuriani's unmatched mastery of his technology. Then they have bright lances. Bright lances are huge laser weapons that can burn straight through their targets. Then you have your ghost glaives, which are obviously a bladed weapon, which are pretty cool, and they are a large power sword essentially. Then there are scorpion claws and even plasma grenades as well. So pretty cool stuff, and a nice little bit of information about the Aeldari weaponry and what it actually does. Then we move on, we get more reading section about the Aeldari, paths of the Asuryani. The Aeldari of the craft worlds, known as the Asuryani, keep to a strict discipline linked to their occupation and place in society. This is known as the path. They carefully focus on mental order, attainment of skill, and higher learning, shunning lower pleasures and the cheap and brief thrill of enjoyable sensations. Very much like the Elves of Warhammer the Old World, in a roundabout way. Obviously there are some elves who do pleasure themselves, and that can be taken exactly how it sounds. Moving on from there though, you get a bit of information about the different paths. So there is a path of the outcast, which includes things like your rangers and the scouts and such like that, and the ones who will venture out a little bit more and be a bit more of an outcast of society, of Aeldari society. The path of the warrior, obviously this is your generic path, so every member of the Aeldari species, which is essentially a fragment of what it once was, all heed the call to war at some point in their lives. Those who walk the path of a warrior will each choose a particular branch in this path inspired by an aspect of Cain, the bloody-handed god. And then the most dangerous path is the path of the seer. The path of the seer is the most difficult and dangerous of the paths. Known as the witch path, those who walk it are intimately connected to the war and the risk of death and madness with every step. So, pretty cool and pretty interesting. So that includes things like your farseers and such like. Moving on from there, though, we get a bit more information about the Great Rift and a read section to do with that. So, known as the Cicatrix Maledictum to the Imperium, Gork's Grin to the Orcs, the Daith Edinian, I think that's how it's said anyway, to the Aeldari, and many other names beside the Great Rift is a tear in the fabric of reality that divides the galaxy. Waves of unnatural energy radiate from it, rendering interstellar travel and communication next to impossible. So, there are two sections to the Great Rift, which we also kind of touched on last week. There is the Imperium Nihilus. So when it was sundered, a shockwave of psychic energy was unleashed, destroying or corrupting planets in its path. Hordes of demons spilled forth, heretical cults arose, decrying the end of civilization, and entire populations turned upon themselves in frenzies of self-destructive violence. So there is that going on. And then there is Imperium Sanctus. The portion of humanity's realm that is known as the Imperium Sanctus is the half that has fared better than in the wake of a Great Rift opening, with many of the systems in regions still within reach of the guiding beacon of the Astronomicon, the psychic signal that makes interstellar travel and communication possible. So a nice little bit of information there for you. And then we have a little bit more information. So Reality Sundered, the Nachmund Gauntlet, and an Empire Divided, because the human empire, essentially the Imperium of Man, is divided into these two sections. Some of it has become very isolated and essentially they're not really in touch with each other. So some worlds are lost and the idea is to try and get themselves together again. Then we move on. We get more information about it and ways to give our Aeldari units names. So using the roll tables like we've had before. So you can give them their leader name, and obviously you can give them their unit epithet as well if you want to. Pretty cool stuff. Entirely up to you though. You do not have to use any of this. It just gives you a little bit of an extra kind of flavour to your games if you have a named unit. Anyway, going on to do with the play section and how to do all the rules, you do have the Oath of Moment for the Space Marines, for instance. So the Oath of Moment is a faction ability that allows you to select an enemy unit upon which to focus your force's wrath at the start of your command phase. Once you have selected the unit, you get a bonus but makes it easier for your troops to hit models in the target unit until the start of your next command phase. So every faction has their own kind of ability, and there are other abilities within good old Warhammer 40k and their units and everything like that, which help you play in different ways. So this is an ability that you can utilize to kind of go through, and it gives you a bit of a tutorial of how to use it as well. So you can use the Oath of Moment in a way to kind of help progress your game and target down enemies a little bit better. And this step-by-step guide obviously gives you a way of doing that. So have a bit of fun with it, enjoy it, play through it a few times, so then you'll learn it a bit more. Then moving on from there, obviously we're going to move on to next week and the week after. So next week, part 2 of our Guardian Defenders, so we will get the other parts and that heavy weapon platform, so we can build them all up, get them going. We get a little bit more information about the fall of the Aeldari and how they've come to kind of be only a fraction of what they once were, and we get information about the Silver Templars, which is pretty cool. Then moving on from there, issue number 25 is a paint issue, not always the best, but very, very handy. Norn Oil, a fantastic shade. You're going to use it on quite a lot of stuff. It darkens down a lot of things because it's essentially a very, very thin black paint. It works exactly how it sounds. It works like an oil. So it will kind of stain your metals and such like that. So if you're painting anything silver, using Norn Oil over the top darkens it down. Makes it look a lot better. Carroburg Crimson is a red shade paint. Works in exactly the same way. So for instance, on the Aeldari, you could use Carroburg Crimson and it will sit in all them recesses, darkens them down without actually saturating the paint, and you can highlight back over it to kind of brighten it back up. So your way of doing it. But both work very, very well. We also get a new brush as well. So brushes are very, very handy, especially if you're new to the hobby. The Citadel brushes are decent. Not going to lie, they're decent brushes. But yeah, happy days. And we'll get a few more information about Tyrannid faction abilities as well. Now, before I go, I'm just going to quickly say I am still missing a few issues. They will turn up at some point, I hope. Don't know when. If you haven't checked out last week's issue, I did also do one of the back issues from before that, straight after, so you'll find them videos in the description. Please check them out. It goes a massive way to help it, even though they're out of date, because we've already gone through them magazines and past that. It is what it is. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and yeah, I'll see you sometime soon. Bye bye now.